Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center, and we are so happy to have you joining us for Symbiotica, the intersection of fungi, art, and technology, an interactive installation exploring symbiotic relationships with artist Jackie Hoysted. And she's going to be joined by some special guests. Poet Enda Coyle, Irish Poet Enda Coyle. We have Irish well represented today as we celebrate this eve of St. Patrick's Day. Enda Coyle-Greene coming in from Ireland, Pennsylvania poet Barbara Crooker, and readings from the work of Irish poet Jane Clarke, as well as two other Irish women who will help with the readings, Juliette Hopkins and Lida Stifel. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you about some other events that we have coming up throughout the rest of this month of March. We're celebrating Women's History Month, and there are some wonderful programs, including our fifth annual Women in the Arts panel discussion, Local Women Explore Creativity, Identity, and Resilience. Jackie was featured a year or two ago on this panel. This year's panel is hosted by blues artist Stacy Brooks and features artist Pamela Betts, blues artist and radio host Ida Campbell, filmmaker Erica Ginsberg, Kuchipudi dancer, writer and storyteller Anila Kumari, as well as comedian Dee Lo and artist Cindy Renteria, and that's on Monday, March 28th. We also have a very popular program coming up. If you love go-go music, DC is known for its go-go music. We have author and photographer Chip Pye joining us on Thursday, March 24th. At 7 o'clock to present his new book, DC Go-Go, 10 Years Backstage, with author and photographer Chip Pye. And that is bound to be another exciting time. We also have some free tickets for tomorrow's Improbable Comedies show. Seltzer, a sober comedy show at the Black Box Theater at 8 p.m. for all SSTCI friends. So just send me an email at lisa@silverspringtowncenter.com. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, Montgomery College, and many others. And now to get started with the program, we will have time for Q&A at the end. If you'd like to make comments or questions along the way in the chat, please feel free to do so. And we are recording this so you can share later with folks. It is on our Silver Spring Town Center Facebook group page. Jackie Hoysted, born in Dublin, Ireland, is an award-winning interdisciplinary artist, curator, and activist based in Montgomery County, Maryland. She has had solo exhibitions across the US and has been featured in the Washington Post, Washington City Paper, HuffPost, Pittsburgh Tribune Review, and Reno Gazette Journal. She's a recipient of grants from Maryland State Arts Council, DC Commission on the Arts, and the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, as well as the Vermont Studio Center, and multiple grants from Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County. Hoysted is co-founder of ArtWatch, a DC artist collective focused on positive political activism that realized the project Art from the Heart in 2020, and where over 1,800 pieces of original work were created by over 200 artists as a thank you to hospital workers. And the One House Project in 2017 and 2018, which was a collaboration of 300 DMV artists. And DMV means DC, Maryland, Virginia, for folks tuning in from outside of the area, celebrating the rich diversity of people that makes us the US today. Additionally, she is curator for the DC organization Solus Nua that focuses on presenting contemporary Irish art. And Hoysted holds a degree in computer science from Trinity College, Dublin, and a fine arts degree from the George Washington Corcoran School of the Arts and Design. Welcome back, Jackie. We're always so thrilled to have you and to share about your fungi project, which we were supposed to host in 2020, if you recall, at our festival, which had to be canceled with everything else. But it's a new day and it's on exhibit at the Stone Tower Gallery in Glen Echo. And we can still see it through the end of this month on the weekends, 12 to 6, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Good. Well, great. Well, please take it away. Tell us more about Symbiotica.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much, Lisa. I want to say a special thank you to Lisa for inviting me back again to talk about my work. And as you mentioned, Symbiotica was originally intended to be shown outside in the plaza in Silver Spring back in 2019. It was actually funded as a green project by the county. They had sponsored a number of artists to create works that spoke to climate change. But unfortunately, it coincided with the start of the pandemic and it was never realized. So in actual fact, it was supposed to have been shown a couple of more times and was cancelled several times during the pandemic. So I'm very happy to have it up in the Stone Tower Gallery right now. You can see it between 12 and 6 for the next 2 weekends, Saturday and Sunday. And it's meant to be, it's an immersive exhibition. So, you know, go at a time that is quiet. It's best around when the sun starts to settle down a little bit. So after 4 p.m. in the evening and afterwards to 6 is about the best time to go. So this evening I arranged, rather than just talk about my own works, which I will do in a little bit, I wanted to open up the this space, this virtual space, to share it with people I've met along the way, and particularly because it's St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, I wanted to include poets that I've met at different artist residencies, and also to share space with some friends that have had meaningful connections with me. And it's in the whole idea of mutually beneficial relationships and symbiotic relations. So we're going to start off the evening with Enda. Enda Coyle-Greene is a poet from Dublin, and I'm going to read out her bio in a second, but we met at an artist residency in Ireland, and I can't remember, maybe it was 2016, 2017, thereabouts, and it was at the Tyrone Guthrie Centre, or Guthrie Centre, depending on how you pronounce it, in Annaghmakerrig, County Monaghan in Ireland. I had an amazing experience there, and I remembered Enda during that time, and as soon as we had this opportunity to have this talk tonight, I reached out to her and asked her, would she share her poems? And I'm going to quickly read her bio here. So if you just give me 1 second. Enda is a Dubliner by birth, now lives near the sea in North County Dublin. Her first collection, Snow Negatives, won the Patrick Kavanagh Award in 2006 and was published by the Daedalus Press in 2007. This was followed by Map of the Last in 2013 and Indigo Electric Baby in 2020, both also from Daedalus. Published, broadcast and anthologized widely, she holds an MA with distinction from the Seamus Heaney Centre for Poetry at Queen's University Belfast, and is co-founder and artistic director of the Fingal Poetry Festival. Enda was awarded a Patrick and Catherine Kavanagh Fellowship in 2020. Enda is actually is being very, very generous with her time tonight. She's not very well, and we're really, really lucky to have her here. So she's going to read her poems and may depart our Zoom call whenever she needs to. But I'm going to open up the floor to her now and just say I'm very, 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 very grateful for you to share your work with us tonight.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and thank you, Lisa. I'm delighted to be here, and apologies in advance for the fact that I have to go when I've done my bit, because I haven't been well and I am very, very tired, but that doesn't take away from the honour of being invited to take part in Symbiotica. I'm really pleased. I'm going to read a couple of poems. I'll read 4 or 5 maybe, if that's okay. We'll see. Anyway, talking about symbiotic, Relationships, I think one that all people, especially women, I think can relate to is the mother-daughter relationship. And I often think of Oscar Wilde's saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, that every woman becomes like her mother. That is her tragedy. And every man doesn't, and that's his, which is not something I actually agree with, really, because I know a couple of men that have become very like their mothers in their age. But the first poem I'm going to read this evening comes from my very first book, which was Snow Negatives, which came from Daedalus way back in 2007. And I dedicated it to my daughter because it came out of one of those conversations, and I don't know if everyone else has experienced this, when you think you're your own being, you came fully formed into the world, and then suddenly at a certain point you realize you sound exactly like your mother, and it's a weird one, you know. And this came from a conversation I was having with my daughter, and I suddenly went, whoa, it's your mother, she's there. So it's a strange kind of it's a prophecy foretold, this in reverse, this poem. But anyway, it also touches on scent, which I think is the most evocative of the senses. It's called Opium, and it's for Vanessa. This is how it will be. A large dog, yellow, I think, will shake himself free of a river, a sea. Before he is dry, he will run to you, cloaked in a river, a different sea. Sometime, in winter perhaps, you'll shift a screen of curtain, sift the night through an open window, lean across your kitchen sink to lift a cat in. Black, I imagine. His fur will be short, dense, filled with fog. You'll breathe him in, and in your present tense, think only of your past. Someday, somewhere, in a city I can't see, a woman will pass you in a crowd, drugged by her perfume, the heady scent she will leave after her. You won't struggle as you fall back to now. And you will remember me telling you this. Of course, one of the first relationship we have really is with ourselves. And Jackie was talking about Anna McCarrick, and the very first time I went to Anna McCarrick, or the second time, I met a woman, a visual artist, who sat down at the table. This woman is renowned for her landscapes. Mary Donnelly is her name. And I asked her what she was going to be working on while she was at the centre, and she said she was there to do a self-portrait. And I thought, good Lord, can you imagine the levels of honesty involved in such an endeavour? I mean, would you be tempted to put everything in or make yourself look 35 again? I know which one I'd go for. Anyway, I'm trying to find the poem now. I should have marked the page. Yes, 31. Here we go. This is also from Snow Negatives. Self-portrait for Mary Donnelly. You do not become what the air insists you have always been, for the time you are here to breathe it. As it is, you are everything the mirror has gleaned from the evidence given on a basis of one day, someday, now. The light twists as you look at what is there. A turn of your head throws a profile past the slanted inner corner of your blue eye. That liar. I'll move on to the middle book, and where am I? Page. Sorry, I'm usually a bit better organized than this, but I'm slightly under the weather at the moment, so bear with me. I'm going to read a fairly short poem from Map of the Last, which is my second book. And I suppose it's to do with the relationship between all living things, animals, people. I'm I'm looking at the little dog that was on screen a moment ago. I have a great love of animals. And I love in particular seeing wild creatures in the wild. You feel so privileged, you know. And I have a particular graw, as they say in Irish, or love for hares, you know, and hares are supposed to, in Irish mythology, are shapeshifters. They're the spirits of your loved dead coming back to you. Sometimes people, it's an Irish and an English thing, I think. But this poem is, I suppose, to do with time in some respects. It's called The Hare. Somewhere between Drogheda and Dunleer, I saw a leggy hare crossing an open field. The train seemed slowed to the animal's lope, his ancient, shape-shifting, unrequited traipse to the cover of trees. But in the time it takes a gaze to angle, steady, aim, the hare and I weren't there. His life, my life, lost in the lick of wheels on track, that instant velocity of always elsewhere. With all that's going on in the world, I think a lot has broken down. A lot of, like we're talking about connections between people, a lot has broken down at the moment, and we have basically a war going on, which is very upsetting to watch on television every night. And we just count ourselves lucky that we're not actually in the middle of it and not just watching it on the news. But I was thinking about what to read tonight, and I picked a poem which I don't think I've ever read this in public, so please bear with me. Hopefully I'll get through it. It's not too long, but it's a strange kind of a poem, because it's an unusual poem for me. Instead of a comma, say, or a pause, I have left a gap between sentences, between phrases, and each phrase is quite innocuous in its own way. They're very bland, innocuous, but put together, they produce a picture. When I was writing this, I had a vision of a particular street in Dublin for some reason. I don't know why. And but tonight, when I was watching the news, I suddenly thought I have to read this tonight. Anyway, it's called What Happened, right? But usually you'd expect a question mark. There's no question mark. It's what happened. That morning, looking to the sky, they waited at train stations. Diesel-gilled buses groaned beneath the weight of bones aching to shift shoulder straps, to switch from hand to hand the blade of a strap. Umbrellas were braced, rolled in on themselves. In the schools, teachers led each class through chants behind laced fingers. Playgrounds emptied. Gates swung shut. At midday, there was a pause. A longer breath was held as bells told whoever was listening something some still believed. Radio and TV soaked the last note's ebb to silence for the news. The following hours saw streets swollen with the hungry. In shops and markets, staggered queues grew. In bars and cafes, chairs scraped closer to counters. Orders were given and received. In suburbs and outlying areas, windows sealed, doors bolted, dogs were muzzled, leashed, walked in droves to the sea. At 5 o'clock, all over parks and marshy fields, a flutter of butterflies, camouflage exposed, rose. On the beach, unraveling rapidly, gripped by a child, a string thinned up and away. in first one colour, then another. A kite blazed. I should say that the midday pause was the Angelus, which Jackie will remember from her 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, the call to prayer. The pause for the Angelus, as they say on the television still. I'm getting pretty tired now, so I'm going to finish up with 2 poems, if that's okay, from Indigo Electric Baby, which is my most recent book. And this, I think I might have had the last book launch in Dublin before the pandemic started. It was Bodies in a Room, something I think we've all forgotten about, but we'll get there again. Anyway, where will I go with this? Okay. Page 70. This is called The Tilt of the Wind, and it's a kind of a, I suppose in the end, a kind of a rumination on the, at the end of it, at the back of it. It's not obvious in the poem, I think, on the work of the artist and the writer in the world today in keeping the ecology kind of alive, and me doing my pathetic bit for it in my own kitchen and my own back garden. The Tilt of the Wind. I've heard it told that when they go, so too will this whole world. And now I'm finding out about the first bee of summer, the fat one that astonishes, lost and panicked on my windowsill. Brought by someone smarter in a glass out to the garden, she thrashed the sky while it was lifted from her. In the moment when our tawny cat, all claws and neatness stored within black feet, pounced. The bee spun in the sun, tried her wings in the tilt of the wind, but fell back, shivered, curled, and couldn't rise until I righted her with the inky end of my pen. I'm going to finish up with a poem I wrote a few years ago, but sometimes with poems, they take a while to make their way into a book. And it was when I looked back on this, there's an echo of Barack Obama in it, which will give you an idea of the era, okay? And I didn't rob his speech, it was osmosis at the end. Anyway, this is called If in Moving. And it concerns itself, I suppose, with how sometimes as a creative you can feel blocked. I hate that term, writer's block. But what I have found for me, if I walk and think, and I live near the sea, so I do a lot of walking near the sea, it helps. This is If in Moving. Mistakes can be made when lonely dogs bark out of the darkness. Their bluff called as you go past. A star can be confused with a plane full of strangers. Streetlights, stemless, drift. But if, in moving, what is there stays fixed in poses you might struggle to unscramble. If you choose to turn towards the sea, 4 islands night snuffed, as you face the restless red eye of the lighthouse. The snarl of cars, the lamentations of a train begin their fade. Even half aware, you'll hear the riff of wave on sand. The top note kick and slap of shoe that, keeping pace with you, is only you, insisting, yes, you can, you can, you can. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Enda. We really, really appreciate it. And especially since you're not well, it was
an honour. Thank you.
Wonderful of you to join us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And listen, I hope you all enjoyed the rest of the evening. I really, really wish I could stay on because, well, for obvious reasons, I just wish I could. But and thank you for listening. And goodbye, Jackie. We'll talk again soon. And Lisa.
Thank you so much, Enda. That was wonderful. We look forward to inviting you back and to you being better soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, so I'm actually going to talk a little bit about Symbiotica myself. So I'm going to start off and hopefully I managed to do this correctly. I'm going to try and share my screen and start off with a small video. I seem to be particularly challenged this evening with Zoom. Oh, it's here. So this is a video, it's its first cut, so it's not complete. And it was created by, if you know, Lillian Bloom. She's a photographer and an artist in the area. And here we go. Oh no, I don't want that. Oh, sorry. I was going to open up this, which I can't stand. Okay, so that gives you a little idea of what of Symbiotica looks like. And as we mentioned, it's in the Stone Tower Gallery in Glen Echo Park through March the 27th, and it's open on Saturday and Sundays between 12 noon and 6 p.m. So basically, it's an immersive interactive art installation, and it comprises fungi. The flowers that you see there on the floor are grown and baked from mycelium, which is the vegetative underground part of fungi. And it's combined with single-use plastic, like plastic water bottles, concrete, and electronics, including LEDs and microcontrollers. Participants put their finger on a pulse sensor, and that sends a radio message to the sensors in the middle of the floor, and that in turn lights up the flower garden. So there's 3 sensors in place on yoga meditation cushions, and so that we can have multiple players basically, and that together that they would light up the flower garden together. And then also you see these blue lights, like the trails, threads on the floor. That's actually fiber optic wire, and they're lit separately, but they're meant to denote the network that mycelium forms underground. mycelium is made up of these individual strands called hyphae, and they create this amazing network, actually very, very beautiful network underground. It's white, and often if anybody here is into gardening, you'll often see these white threads through the ground, and that's actually the mycelium that you're seeing. So as you can see, the exhibition includes most of the senses. There's touch, sound, smell. I've included, there's actually some sculptures made from mycelium. There's some bowls, and then I have some items there as well that people can pick up, and there's very distinct smell from mycelium, and to feel it. So depending on how the process of growing mycelium works like this, I buy a substrate basically that's wood chips, and it has dormant mycelium in it. And then you feed it flour and water, and you leave it for 5 days, 7 days or whatever. And then you come back and you feed it again. And you'll see these white furry threads beginning to appear all over it, until eventually the mycelium consumes all the wood. So depending on how long you leave the mycelium to grow, it takes on different, I guess, different textures, basically. Sometimes it feels like it's suede. Sometimes it feels like the cap of a mushroom. Sometimes it just feels like it's fur. It's very, very tactile. But when you get to the stage, though, you think, okay, you're ready to unmold it. Then you place it in the oven and you basically cook it. And that's not the part I enjoy. So I only make things when I feel it's really important, when I actually want to make something. But I do not make things as a practice just to make them, and then they'll be thrown out and kill these items, actually, because it's a living creature, basically, as far as I'm concerned. Creature is probably not the right word, because it's an organism, but these are like your babies. Every single day you go down and you check on it and see where it is, and you can see, this life form happening, and you become very, very attached to them over time. So, and I always, it's ridiculous, but I always call them he. So, and then there's sound in the gallery too. I felt it was important to have an immersive environment that people could sit down, relax, contemplate on where we are in life. That music actually is borrowed. It is not my own creation. That's important to say, and I'm using it under a Creative Commons with attribution license, and the artist that has created is called AL Music 34. So I just want to make sure I mention that. So basically, as I mentioned, it's inspired by fungi, and fungi are mycelium. And as I mentioned, it is the underground vegetative part of fungi. And mycelium plays a really important part in our lives. We would not be able to function without mycelium. So as I mentioned, it forms this vast underground network. And what it does is it actually exchanges nutrients with trees and plants and vegetation around us in return for sugars, basically. But it also exhibits intelligence and plays a very important part as a network underground, exchanging information. So for instance, if there's some kind of a predator that attacks one tree, it could be an insect or whatever, but it's a predator, then the mycelium sends messages across to other trees to let them know that their forest or whatever has been invaded, and they can take precautionary actions then against whatever is happening. It also is responsible for, as we can see it in our homes every day. Mycelium or fungi grow on the fruits and vegetables and bread in our home, and it decomposes things. But so while we might think that might be awful happening in our kitchens, it's a really important process that takes place, especially out in, in the forests or out everywhere outside, that it's decomposing everything around us. And it's a really important part of death and rebirth. And death in the sense that it decomposes things, it decomposes matter, but it makes room for new life and new things to occur. For instance, when it decomposes all the leaves in the forest, it makes rooms for the little seeds that fell from the tree to be able to get sunlight and grow. And if it wasn't for it, I mean, we would be buried under our own matter, basically. I'm not going to list all the benefits of mycelium here tonight, but it also it's being used. I'm a little bit torn how I feel about this. Like, I sent away for this product to make my mycelium bowls or whatever, or to make my flowers, but it's also being used now. For instance, the place I buy my mycelium product from is called Ecovative, and it's a firm up in Pennsylvania, actually. I think, well, actually they've moved to New York, but they take wood chippings from furniture stores, etc. So it's really the waste from those companies, and then they make products. So some of the products that they're making today, for instance, and you might have seen this in the newspapers maybe about 2 years ago, that they got a big order from IKEA to make the packaging materials for IKEA's furniture. And they're also Hermes and all those fancy fashion places are now making myco leather. So they're making handbags and they're making clothes out of myco leather. So you're seeing it in a large number of areas. It's being used for food, substitute of meat. And a point I want to make here is, so this is all good while you're using waste, but I wonder where we're going to get to the point where we'll start growing trees in order to feed them as mycelium, so that we can create these sustainable products. And we're back in this capitalist circle of use and abuse of nature, basically. And that goes back to my point where I feel really bad when I make a bowl or whatever, and I kill off this organism. And this is why I make very, very little of the product anymore. Originally, I had started out with this idea that I would make sustainable art so that I could eventually throw it out in the garden and it would become part of nature again. But when you start working on it, you realize that this is a living thing. So really, so my work here was influenced by a number of readings. One of them was The Hidden Life of Trees, and I've forgotten the name of the author. He is a forester in Germany, and it's a wonderful book. It introduced me to mycelium and the role it plays and trees in nature, which from a child I have always found to be almost like they're people around us. I've always been fascinated with the form and the nature of trees. And then another wonderful book that I read that was really transformative for me was a book by Anna Lowenhout Singh, and I'm ruining her name. But anyway, it's The Mushroom at the End of the World, on the possibility of life in capitalist ruins. And it's about a mushroom called Matutake. It's a Japanese mushroom that's highly prized and that no longer grows in Japan because of the deforestation that's happened there during and after World War II. But it is grown here, it grows naturally in the wild in Washington State, and it is harvested by migrant workers who have come from countries where their own way of life has been disturbed. So this book, I highly recommend it to everybody to read, is really about climate change and how we might function in a world when, capitalism, perhaps a good thing, falls apart. And how, well, yeah, in a negative sense, like how we will all become migrant workers to some extent with climate change. And then the other book that fascinated me, coming as I had a career in computer science before I became an artist. So I'm interested in this idea of, machine learning, cyborgs, and how we will change and how our future will change, depending on how technology advances, if you want to look at it that way. And this book that I read is from Juliette who's joined us, our alma mater, Trinity College Dublin, and it's where is the name of it? It's Tim O'Connell, and it's how to be a machine. It's a very amusing book to read about what everybody is doing in Silicon Valley with regard to preserving the brains and so forward, things like that for the future, so that they can take part in a more advanced stratosphere where our bodies are no longer important. So that's what Symbiotica is about in a nutshell. I was really taken with this idea of mutually beneficial relations and symbiotic relations, and how we behave in life ourselves, how we are in the world today. Like, first, I've always asked myself the question, well, what benefit do human beings have to the planet? Like, if you think about fungi, they have good actors and bad actors. They have plenty of bad actors too. I'm referring to mycelium and the positive role it plays in exchanging with the trees and so forth, and what it does with decomposition, etc. But there's also a lot of bad actors that do things there. But when I think about humans, I really cannot find a good function for the planet. For human beings. So it would be interesting if people would put their thoughts in the chat about that, and if you can come up with something that convinces me that we have a positive part in the life of the planet. But in the context of climate change, like, what is it that we can do? How can we become better co-inhabitants of the planet? What do we need to do? I mean, originally I was, when I was doing these readings, I was in an artist residency in Ireland, another one called Kilrallig. It's on the southwest coast of Kerry in Ireland, and it's on a cliff and overlooks the ocean, and each artist lives in a refurbished famine cottage. And it's really a fantastic place to visit. And here you're living in this little house, and you have very, very little means, and you're living a very wonderful life. And that's where I come up with the idea. I was doing all these readings and come up with this idea. And, can we sustain the lives that we're living in right now with capitalism? Capitalism is based on continued growth, and it's continued sale of materials, the continued need of things. And how can we stop that? And how can we work together? So that I don't have any answers to any of this, but obviously, I want people to go to my exhibition, or whether you don't go to my exhibition, to sit at home and sit quietly and think about how we can change things going forward, because what we're doing is not sustainable in any sense. And then also, the one thing I wanted to mention about Kilrallig, it was, obviously it was during the Trump presidency as well, and we have got to a very divisive country in terms of our politics, not being able to talk together. And right now we're in a situation where if we're not already at war, we could possibly be in war. And how can we be better human beings and become better co-inhabitants? I mean, war is going to destroy the planet. You can see the pictures that are coming out from Ukraine now, and devastated towns, devastated lands, and where will we end up with all of this? So yeah, so I think that's all I'm going to say about it now. I'm just going to share my screen again and show a few more detailed pictures of the artwork, so that you can have a slightly better idea. And I'm going to share my screen again and hopefully find the folder. Can you see that, the bridge? Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I'm just going to go through, it's just a quick slideshow of the installation. And as I mentioned earlier, it's actually better if you go later in the day, because the gallery is a little bit darker. For safety, some lights have to be kept on. This is one of the flowers. You can see the mycelium, the white or the grey part is the mycelium. And then this is some samples I have in the gallery for people to see. The one of the petri dish was, well, at least it was growing at the time that I had installed. And then this is one of the bowls that I cast and mold and cook. And then, yeah, same thing. All right. So maybe what we can do is, just before we turn over to the next poet, our next poet actually is Jane Clarke, but she can't join us from Wicklow, County Ireland, at this late hour from Ireland. So, but beforehand, maybe it would be a good opportunity maybe to ask anybody if you have any questions about the installation before I move on. And you can unmute if you would like to ask something.
It looks incredible, really. You're way too smart.
Oh, thank you very much. It took a lot of work. Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, actually, Alberto Gaitan, and I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I have to mention that Alberto ran a class many years ago with the WPA, and it was an introduction to electronics. And he gave a class on how to use Arduino, which is a microcontroller. And it was from there that I started to get interested in more advanced. The type of programming I used to do was very archaic. It was in the airline industry, and it was 1960s technology. There's still a lot of 1960s technology there, and it's just a step up above machine code. So Alberto introduced us to Arduino and Arduino code, and I think processing too, if I'm correct. And oh my God, that opened up a whole new world for me. And then I plodded along for years trying to learn stuff. So it's kind of funny because now I think I've gone full turn. Like when I gave up work as a computer programmer, I used to work for Amtrak actually. And I never wanted to see a computer as long as I lived. I never wanted to see a program as long as I lived again. And then I have gone full circle again. And I just love being able to incorporate technology in my work now. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Anybody else? All right. Oh, Alberto is pretty, Gaitan.
No, Gaitan. I think it's Gaitan, if it's Spanish. Alberto Gaitan.
So
Maybe he can tell us. Alberto?
Yes.
Oh,
Well, I do have to say, I mean, if there's a word to be mispronounced, I am your person. I am so bad. So,
Wow.
okay, so maybe next we're going to turn over to, I'm going to introduce Jane Clarke. Jane is not here because she had a conflict, and but she did send a letter for me to read out, and then I'll follow that up with a poem that she has done online, and then I have two special readers who are going to read two of her poems. So this is from Jane. Hello everyone, I'm delighted to be part of this evening's celebration. Jackie's work contemplating symbiosis and interdependence is all the more meaningful in light of what is happening in the Ukraine, as well as Afghanistan and the Yemen, not to mention climate change. Through Jackie's perceptive and challenging installations, we see the more than human world anew and are reminded of what we are risk of losing forever. And the three poems that Jane has shared with us are When the Tree Falls, the title poem of her second collection that marks the natural cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And that's the one I'm going to show on video. And then Birthing the Lamb is going to be by Lida. And I'll introduce Lida in a few minutes when I get there. And this poem is about new life. It's set on a West of Ireland farm, not far from when Jackie grew up. And actually, Jane actually and her family live very close to my sister in County Roscommon too. They have a farm there. And then Juliette is going to read On the Boat. And she said, I read this poem from my first collection when I met Jackie and the poet Terry Crose Davis at an event organized by Solus Nua in 2016. On the eve of St. Patrick's Day, I'd like to pay tribute to all the women who left Ireland for new life in the US. And congratulations, Jackie, and thanks to everybody for listening. And I'm going to share my screen again and play for video. So this is Jane introducing her new book, the book is actually called Where the Tree Falls, and she gives some background information to it.
So a little bit more about the collection as a whole. I wrote it from between 2015, after my first book, The River, came out, and 2019. And during that time, I met some poet friends who would say to me, how does it feel to be bringing out a second collection? And I suppose especially after the very good reception for The River, and there were lots of people who really loved that collection, who said, are you a bit daunted to bring out another one? And I was, definitely. And but what I felt is that these poems belong together, and that there were the poems I needed to write, that I had to write, and that in bringing them together, I hoped I was making something that had an identity of its own. Like the work is very personal to me, but I wanted something that would stand on its own and that I could offer to the reader to make their own. And so in that time, my father was becoming increasingly unwell and weaker. And also my very good friend, Shirley McClure, who's also a poet, became very unwell. And I accompanied both of them through their illnesses and their deaths. And so it's a book of mourning. It's a book of grief. But it's also a book of love and of celebrating love. And despite that whenever we love, there's the risk of losing. And maybe we love all the more because of that. And it's a book of nature as well. So I'm going to read the poem that is the title poem. Now, actually, I had the title before I wrote the poem, because back in the summer of 2017, which was about 6 months after my father died, I read the Mary Lavin short story, In the Middle of the Fields. And there's one line there, it's, when the tree falls, how can the shadows stand? And when I read that, I thought, that's the title for my book. I had no doubt about it. And then after my father died, a whole year after that, a tree fell across the Suck, the river, on the farm where I grew up. And I used to go down and sit there. And that tree showed me a lot about the life that emerges after a death. And so that inspired this poem. When the tree falls into the river, it slows the current. Water pools in the hollows it makes. Pike and trout find a new place to hide. Beetles, mayfly, and mites feed on leaf litter. The mossy trunk lies still as a bridge. A kingfisher settles, watches for minnow. Branches reach for the light, noble with new buds. So I hope that the Solace Nua Poetry Group is noble with new buds and goes on to flourish and to provide enjoyment and learning and companionship for all of you. Thanks very much.
So that was actually a reading from the first poetry group for Solace Nua, which is a cultural organization in DC. And they, I used to be the visual arts curator for them. So if you're interested in more Irish poetry, that's a good place to check out. And that's I'll put that in the chat in a little bit for you. So I'm going to, actually, I forgot to read Jane's bio. So I'm just going to quickly read that. And then I'm going to introduce Lida, who's going to read one of Jane's poems. Jane Clarke grew up in a farm in County, actually I'm going to stop the share. There we go. Jane Clarke grew up in a farm in County Roscommon and now lives with her partner in Glen in County Wicklow. Her first collection, The River, was published by Blood Axe Books in 2015. Her second collection, When the Tree Falls, was published by Blood Axe Books in September 2019. All the Way Home, an illustrated sequence of poems in response to a soldier's letters from the front during World War I, was published by Smith Doorstep in April 2019 in collaboration with the Mary Evans Picture Library, London. In 2016, Jane won the Hennessy Literary Award for Emerging Poetry with 3 poems from The River, for Isabel, The Blue Bible, and Every Tree. She also won the inaugural Listowel Writers' Week Irish Poem of the Year in the Irish Book Awards 2016. The River was shortlisted for the Royal Society of Literature's, and I'm not going to get this, Enda Prize, given for the distinguished work of fiction or non-fiction, evoking the spirit of a place. She was also included in Poetry Ireland's Review's 2016 Rising Generation issue. And now I'm going to introduce Lida. So Lida, I know Lida going back a long time. After I finished in the Corcoran, I was a very mature student in the Corcoran College of Art and Design. And then once I finished, I was kind of at a loss for what to do. And I took up an advanced drawing class at the Yellow Barn Gallery in Glen Echo. And Lida was the instructor there. And I think I went for several years. But Lida also lives very close to my old home in Gatesburg. I used to pass Lida's home all the time on the back roads in North Potomac. And she has a barn and with sheep in it that she looks after, and she would often tell us stories about the sheep and the lambing. And the poem that she's going to read for Jane now is called Birthing the Lamb. And before I turn it over to her, I'll just read her bio. Lida is a perceptual artist, and she captures intimate scenes onto canvas. Her paintings observe in nature and are conceived in light, shadow, and a sense of spontaneity. Stifel lives and works on a small farm in Maryland. Her studio overlooks meadows and landscapes. She has studied locally at the Corcoran School of Art, and her work is in numerous public and private collections nationally. And Lida, if you would like to read your poem.
Yes, I hope I do justice to Jane's poem, and I wish I could read it with an Irish accent. It's called Birthing the Lamb. Almost dawn, a March wind whistles bitter through the shed, where the boy kneels to a ewe, panting in the corner. Waters broken, eyes closed, lip curled. She strains with every contraction. His arm is far inside her, but his fingers can't find a hoof. Not even the tip of a nose to guide him. Chest thumping, staccato breathing. He tries to remember what his father said. Take it slow, good lad. Push back your head, slip in your hand, reach for a leg. That's it. Cup the hoof. Now ease it forward. Don't pull or jerk. Just a steady pressure. Streaked yellow and red, the lamb slithers out, gives a cough, A splutter shakes its head. Taking her time, the ewe licks off the mucus and nuzzles her newborn to its feet. The boy sits back in the straw on his heels. For a moment, he forgets and turns to tell his father, it was the best feeling.
Thank you so much, Lida. And now I'm going to introduce Juliette. Juliette was born in Switzerland to an Irish father and American mother. The family moved to Bray on the border of Wicklow in Dublin, where when Juliette was 5 to be closer to her paternal grandparents. Juliette attended school at university before taking a few years off to travel to South America. She returned to Dublin in the 90s and worked with a number of charitable organisations before doing her master's in laws at Trinity College Dublin. Unfortunately, after completing her master's, the recession in Ireland meant she was unable to find a suitable job, and so she made a difficult decision to move to Washington, DC, where she now lives and works. And that's actually when I met Juliette. It was, I had turned my home into an art gallery, and she turned up one night, and you were fairly new in the country then, and I remember that night so well. So I'm going to turn, and this poem is about immigration, and Juliette was the perfect person to read this.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, I mean, when I read this poem, I was like, oh my gosh, it is perfect. And I remember that night very, very well myself. I was so excited to meet you, a Trinity alum and an Irish person that I was like, oh, thank God, somebody I can kind of relate to. So this is On the Boat by Jane Clarke. On the boat, we were mostly virgins. We talked about who we were going to be, waitresses, seamstresses, nurses. We didn't talk about why we had to leave. We talked about where we were going to be, the wooden frame house with a picket fence, but we didn't talk about why we had to leave as we touched the lockets around our necks. The wooden frame house with a picket fence led to talk of lost villages, lost streets. As we touched the lockets around our necks, we didn't foresee tenements that grew thick as trees. When we talked of lost villages, lost streets, and the diligent men we were going to marry, we didn't foresee tenements that grew thick as trees. The suitcase of memories we would have to carry. To the diligent men we were going to marry, when we were waitresses, seamstresses, nurses, nor the suitcase of memories we would have to carry from the boat where we were mostly virgins.
Thank you so much. Well, I didn't come here through, immigration because of the downturn in the economy, but that particular poem really struck me. So now I'm going to introduce Barbara. Barbara Crooker is another artist I met at another as an artist residency in Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. And, in this whole idea of tonight and who I've selected is kind of like, like mycelium growing out, all the people who have, impacted me in one way or another. And how all of us play a really important part of enriching each other person's lives. So let me get Barbara's bio. Barbara is an award-winning poet and editor for Italian Americana, who lives, writes, and gardens in rural northern eastern Pennsylvania. She is the author of 12 chapbooks and 9 full-length books of poetry. Some Glad Morning Poetry Series, University of Pittsburgh Poetry Press 2019 is her latest. Her awards include Grammy Spoken World finalist, the W.B. Yeats Society of New York Award, the Thomas Merton Society of the Sacred Award, and 3 Pennsylvania Council Fellowships in Literature. Her work appears in a wide variety of literary journals and anthologies, including Commonwealth, Contemporary Poets on Pennsylvania, and the Bedford Introduction to Literature. She has been the recipient of residencies at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, the Moulin Anef in Uvela, and the Tyrone Cooch Centre in Annaghmakerry, County Monaghan, Ireland. During 2 residencies there, she wrote a series of meditative poems on the Book of Kells, which turned into a book by the same name, published by Cascade Books, and which won the Best Poetry Book of 2019 award from Poetry by the Sea.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me tonight. This has been just absolutely wonderful listening to the different poems and seeing your exhibit, which I wouldn't be able to see because I'm up here in Pennsylvania. And just that interconnectedness, meeting at the VCCA as we did so many years ago. And now I'm about to go back there a week from Monday for my 20th day. And my time in Anna McCarrick was absolutely magical, where these poems developed. And so I will read you a few of them tonight. So, some of my journey in Ireland was as a tourist, and this poem started there, Newgrange, from the Valley of the Boyne in Ireland. It's deep time here, this barrow grave, 5,000 years old, where we follow like sheep behind the guide to the heart of its cruciform center. I've never been in a space so dark. What was it like to fear that the sun would not return, that crops would wither, deer flee, that night's dark cloak was all there was? But miraculously, on the lip of the solstice, the light returned, liquid and golden, ran down the narrow corridor, hit the back wall, splashed in the stone basin, and they knew summer would come back, run to fruit. Light, dark, freeze, thaw, seed time, harvest, wheel of the year, the spiral dance. What would they make of our device-laden lives, fossil-fueled cars, overstocked larders? Who stands in the dark and listens now, gaping at the stars? And I very much share your sensibilities, Jackie, on interconnectedness. You know, when you're a gardener, yes, I have seen mycelium, and I'm a composting gardener, so I particularly see it. I don't know if this is typical worldwide, but in America, we plant peas on St. Patrick's Day. And since it's going to rain tomorrow, I did mine today. And I was just thinking about Ireland with every spadeful that I chucked in. Anyway, you know, I went to that residency in Anna McCarrick, hoping that I could do a series of meditations on the Book of Kells, but I didn't really have a thought that I would actually get to see it because I'm incapable of driving on the other side of the road and I'm old. And, you know, Anna McCarrick is close to the border between the north and the south, and it's quite a journey to get down to Dublin. But through serendipity, a playwright had to go down to Dublin for a funeral, and I asked if I could tag along. And that's, again, just one of the wonderful interconnections where randomly at these places, you meet other people that you really click with, and then these wonderful things happen. And so I got a chance to see it in person, where I thought I'd only either see it online or I would see it in reproduction in a book. So this is, the title is Trinity College, the Book of Kells. And on 10/19/2013, this was the page of the day, because those of you who've seen it know that there's only one page recto and verso that's displayed every day. And it was a portrait of St. John, folio 290 verso and 292 recto. In a dim room, the Gospel of John rises, pure gold in the gloom. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. John's seated on a throne of ultramarine, haloed in plates of light. He's my tribe, a scribe, notebook in one hand, pen in the other. Around him, tattooed in vellum, interlace knots, no beginning or end. The more I stare in this darkness, the less I see. Patterns too small for my retina, these aging eyes. Made from pigments of verdigris, orpiment, lampback, and woad. Is it a vision or merely a dream? Metal work or woven ribbons? This is the universe, recast as pattern, and I draw in a breath, word of God on my tongue. And throughout the first section of the book, I have meditations on various images that are in the Book of Kells, the inks, the materials used. This one is called Interlinear, and it's the little teeny animals and things that are hidden in the pictures. Let's praise the agile little animals that flit here and there in the Vulgate text, who can wedge in small spaces. The mouth in initial P, the moth in initial P, antenna flickering outside the line. Or the monk on his horse trotting right off the page. Look, there's an otter, his mouth full of fish, and here a blue cat sits watchfully by. A gorgeous green lizard slithers in the text, 72R, while a wolf pads his way through 76V. It's a whole barnyard, chickens and mice, hounds and hares, snakes, eagles, and stags. Animals is decoration. Animals is punctuation, things seen and unseen. So let us praise all of God's creatures, including the small and the inconsequential, all of us, interlinear, part of the larger design. And then in the second and the next parts of the book, I go into more of my experience as an outsider being in Ireland, and because I've got such an interest in the natural world, the flora and the fauna. And I'm particularly reading this poem. I had tagged it ahead of time, but I'm reading it for Enda because I've got a hare that shows up in this poem. And they're both like and unlike our rabbits, who are my enemy in the garden, I have to say. Ireland. A brown hare washes her face in the lane, while the hare in the moon looks on. The hare in the moon carries an egg, new cycle of life that comes in the spring. But now it's autumn, the sky closing in, fir trees inking footprints on the gray silk sky. A luminous sky, tattered with crows. Two swans, ruffled lilies, float in the lake's bright bowl. Some fairies touched all the trees overnight, turning them orange, yellow, and red. All of the green fields are clotted with sheep. What is this world but the body of God? And would those people intent on destroying all of it be paying attention to some of this? I just think if you can fall in love with the world, how can you want to destroy it? So one of the other things that I didn't go with a plan of doing, and this book was written over 2 residencies, 3 or 4 years apart, I think, but was to try a fairly difficult form. I'm not a poet who works a lot in received forms. This one is a very obscure Spanish form called the glosa, which takes 4 lines from another poet, uses it as an epigraph, and then each one of those lines ends a 10-line stanza. And after I'd gotten there on the first residency and wrote the first one, I decided to really make this a challenge and to really connect this with the residency, I needed to use Irish writers. So the 4 lines I'm using in this poem are from Seamus Heaney's Perch, and the poem's titled Lake Anamacarrig. Guzzling the current against it, all muscle and slur, in the Finland of perch, the fenland of alder, on air that is water, on carpets of bandstream, on hold, in the everything flows and steady go of the world. Seamus Heaney. After rain, the lake spreads out its gray water, bolts of silk rippling in the feather-tipped breeze. There's a chatter of rooks in the chestnuts, their coal-black bodies, dark stars sucking light from all that surrounds them. Serrated chestnut leaves, copper and amber, the grass below a glint of green plush. The rain's thin music has set the world humming. Small stanzas of fishes, slim as a whisper, are guzzling the current, against it all muscle and slur. The rain returns, hawking the surface, dimpling the skin of the fish's gray sky. So does its rattle and chatter bother their dreaming, their little thoughts as they thin on their way? Or is it just static, an untuned radio, television before cable, turning rabbit ears here and there, trying to conjure an image from snow? Hiss and trickle, the drops hit my window, then slowly meander their way down the pane. Everything's liquid, a watery prayer in the Finland of perch, the Fenland of alder on air. Then the wind picks up, whistling round corners, flinging the rain in tight parallel lines. The glass of the windows becomes a gray blur, but stretched out before me, the grass is pure emerald, thirstily drinking what comes from the sky, rain that falls on the just and unjust, the young and the old. Out in the larger world bicker of politics, the rich keep on scheming, dreaming up ways to corner the market for a future whose currency will be in rivers, the gold that is water on carpets of bandstream on hold. Now, today, the sun has turned up its high beams, casting deep shadows on the gleaming lawn. The rooks are giddy, drunk on the sunshine, gossiping noisily from tree to tree. Across the pale lake, tips of the rowans are starting to flame. The Celts who once lived here believed that the body's an echo of soul. Today, clouds swirled like cream in blue coffee. It's hard to imagine our soon-to-be breakdowns, the greed of the powerful, the blackbirds of drought. Instead, there's the fish, rippled, impearled in the everything flows, steady go of the world. And a couple more. Sorry, I thought I'd tag this. Okay, so something that Jackie said made me decide I'm switching what I was planning to read and want to read this. Because one of the medieval Irish alphabet, all of them, for writing short messages and transcriptions was often written on wood, and each of the letters stands for a native Irish plant or tree. So our first alphabet was trees. And I thought that was pretty wonderful, and I did some research. And I don't normally write, as I said, in received forms, and this one is rhyme couplets. Hey. Q is for apple, greeny of leaf. B is for birch tree, white in relief. L is for rowan, favored by thrushes. H is for hawthorn, planted by houses. M is for bramble, covered in thorns. D is for oak and its many acorns. G is for ivy, forever green. N is for ash, seeds of winged peas. Z is for blackthorn, its harvest of sloes. T is for holly, found in hedgerows. C is for hazel, its lamb's tail catkins. S is for willow that sways in the wind. F is for fern that grows in deep woods. R is for elder, whose berries are food. I is for yew, hard wood that endures. O is for hillsides covered in firs. U is for heath that bees mine for honey. Ng is for broom that blooms where it's sunny. E is for aspen that quakes in the breeze. A is for pine with needles for leaves. And that's my 15 minutes, so thank you.
Wonderful, Barbara. Jackie, you're muted.
There we go. Unmute myself. There we
Here's my book again.
So the Ogham alphabet actually, they think, goes back to the Druid times.
Ah,
And actually, while I was at Anna McCarrick, I started a body of work on identity about that. And so I created that, like, they're kind of like heads, but the spine of the body is actually its own script. So, you know, and each one of them reads something or other. So, and it's a very, very beautiful script.
yes, yes.
But anyway, thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing your work, and Lida, and Juliette had to go. So so maybe if anybody has any questions you would like to ask them now, or if anybody can tell me what good we do to the planet, I would like to hear your answers.
Well, I recycle every single thing, even my Keurig plastic cups. I tear them apart, empty the coffee out, and put them in the recycling. It's more than most people would do, I guess.
Even better not to use them.
I know, even better not to use them. You're right, absolutely right. Yeah, that's a bad.
My
My husband doesn't drink coffee, so I mean, I'm the only person that drinks coffee, so I can't make a whole pot.
You put one scoop into a French press and make your coffee, and then you put the grinds into your compost.
My son-in-law does a French press. I guess I should learn to do that. Yeah.
Okay, well, you sort of scoop the plastic when you do that.
Yeah. Barbara, I've been to the Virginia Center for Creative Arts, and I've also been to Aviar.
Yes, Ovilar is fabulous.
I went to a painting and poetry workshop, and all the painters wrote poems, and all the poets were learning to paint.
I love it.
Do you know my friend Mary Page Evans?
I sure do.
Yeah,
She's
great. She's wonderful.
I've got one of her paintings right here.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Behind me.
Oh, she's how can her nephew is married to my niece, so we're kind of related.
I haven't seen her in a very long time, but
she's a little ball of energy.
She sure is. She sure is. When she had her retrospective show at the Wilmington Art Museum,
Delaware, yeah.
She had a poetry reading as part of it, and I was honored to be part of that too. Just
good.
Honored to be part of tonight.
Well, I had fun
Great.
trying to write poetry.
Well, and I write a lot of ekphrastic poetry, which is poetry that has a conversation with paintings. I have several books that have entire sections of paintings on, say, fauve paintings and impressionist paintings. And a couple of reviews of my books have said, oh, you know, as a painter, Barbara Crooker does such and such. No. You've never played Pictionary with me. I am not a visual artist at all. Only words.
Well, I'd like to get your book. Actually, I'd like to get all the poems, but from all the poets. So,
well, April is National Poetry Month, so it's a great time to buy books of poetry.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you to all the poets, and please put in the chat links to your books. Jackie, I just asked Jackie if she would run through the Symbiotica video again, because I had a couple of people come in after she started showing it, and I know they're fungi people. And they're keen to see that. And people are also asking me if you could remind us when and where to see this wonderful exhibition, Jackie.
Will do. So it's in the Stone Tower Gallery at Glen Park. I guess is it Bethesda or close to Bethesda? But Glen Park is very famous, and it's open on Saturday and Sundays, 12 to 6 p.m. up until the 27th of March. So that's Sunday, the 27th of March, 12 to 6 p.m. And it's actually better to go. I mean, it's fine to go earlier, but it's actually better and more immersive if you go later in the day, because the sun comes down a bit and the gallery is a little bit darker then, and it's just a better visual experience. So I'm going to show a video I showed at the top of the talk in case you didn't get to see it. And for anybody who would like to, if you want me to meet you there, I'm very open to that. Or if you would like to ask me any questions, reach out to me. I'm very excited to speak about it. There we go. So it's just a short little video of what it looks like and what the experience is.
Wonderful. And Yanni actually just wrote me privately and said she loved the poetry and is very curious to see the exhibit. So, and I know we have other mushroom fungi fans in the audience. Maybe they have some questions for you. If you just want to, maybe Michelle, hi.
Oh, yeah, hi. Wait, yeah, I'm sorry, I spelt Kusama's name wrong. I forgot the last A. Yeah, I'm a huge mushroom fan, but I lived in the fresh mushroom capital of the world, which is Kennett Square, Pennsylvania.
That's where my daughter lives.
Yeah, what's her name?
Tori Kist.
No,
you know her.
Well,
No, I mean, it is the mushroom capital of the world.
yes, it is. No, it's the fresh mushroom. capital.
Yeah, well, right.
No, because the Chinese are the dried. China is the dried mushroom capital of the world. There is a big distinction there.
If you get the wind right, just right, it really smells the mushrooms. I mean,
well, yeah, it did.
When
How do you like it?
no, it's not a pleasant smell.
Well,
I don't know. I
like mushrooms growing in the basement, and there's always a chemical smell in our house. And I've tried to get rid of it. And then I was growing shiitake and oyster mushrooms in the basement, and the air was so clear. It was like fresh spring day. It was like it just absorbed every bad smell down there. It was
It was absorbing all the bad smells then. Like it absorbs toxins in the environment.
Or maybe that's what I was smelling.
Yeah,
Not
well,
the
they
mush
could,
now.
I mean, they could be used, they're used a lot for micro remediation, like say from oil spills and stuff like that. There's been a lot of cases
Mm.
where, you know, they've been used to mop up stuff.
Well, you know, 300 million years ago, mycelium figured out how to break down lignin and cellulose. Lignin and cellulose are what plants, trees, you know, all plant material is made of. And before mycelium figured out how to do this, of course, the trees would just fall, and we built up all this coal and oil. This is where fossil fuels come from. But once mycelium figured out how to break it down, that's why we have a finite amount of coal and oil on the earth. Once mycelium figured out how to break down lignin and cellulose, we stopped being able to do that. Isn't that crazy?
Well, apparently, so I don't know if you joined the talk last year, Michelle, with my niece, who is a microbiologist, and her speciality is she was doing a postdoc and she got fellowship in with fungi.
With fungi.
Fungi as it relates to improving production in agriculture. And so she had told me that fungi were the original plants, are the ones that broke down everything as well. Yeah. So without fungi, we wouldn't be here at all.
We wouldn't be here at all. No, we absolutely would not be here. I mean, some people speculate like they're like, you know, an asteroid crashed into the earth and there were these fungi, and that's where they came from, because they're a completely separate kingdom.
Right.
They have their own kingdom. They're so fascinating. They are, and there are so many varieties of them. I mean, it's mind-boggling. There are like millions of varieties of fungi.
I put in the text. Did you read Merlin's book, Merlin Sheldrake's book?
No, I don't.
Life.
Sheldrake?
Sheldrake, yeah. Oh my God, I'm forgetting. Now I got it.
It's in the chat. Mushroom at the end.
There, but it's Entangled Life, and he's got a lot of write-ups, and actually my niece is even in the reference portion of the book. But let me see, Entangled Life. But it's a wonderful read. It's Entangled Life. How? Come on, Merlin, like as in Merlin the magician.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many tidbits in there, like factoids, as you said.
Yeah.
What they do and what they're responsible for. And it's actually from that book, I was kind of like in love with this notion of symbiotic relationships and mutually beneficial relations, you know, and only looking at the good things that fungi did. And then I read Entangled Life and I go, Jackie, there's bad actors and there's a lot of good actors, you know, so it's not,
well,
it's like humans, just, you know, in some extent.
You know, it's fascinating because, you know, there was a type of fungi that was involved with the cicadas. I don't know if you heard about this.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean, so they're involved with insects. They're involved with, you know, all kinds of animals, and definitely with us. I mean, we love the psychedelic mushrooms.
I have not yet tried them yet. I'm open to research.
Have you tried them, Michelle?
I tried them once a long time ago in San Francisco. It was a fascinating experience.
What was it like?
Well, there were 4 people and we sat for about 4 hours watching. We were looking out at this building. I'm trying to think of the name of this building. It's a very famous building in San Francisco. It's shaped sort of like a pyramid. And anyway, they were cleaning the building. And we were just sitting there mesmerized as the lights went on and off in different offices and different floors as these people move through. I mean, so it's, you know, it's completely crazy, you know, when you think about it.
Your senses are distorted.
4 hours of your life
focused,
completely absorbed and mesmerized by watching the lights going on and off in an office building.
Wow. Oh, great.
It really slows, this particular mushroom really slowed down the world. Oh, you've got your, oh, I should have my
Yes,
sunflower
thank you for
on.
giving me that.
Oh yeah, you're so
So the-
welcome. Yeah.
The sunflower for Ukraine.
Yes.
And yeah.
But
So Jackie also recently created Ukrainian crowns. Speaking of Ukraine,
that's yeah.
There's a group of us.
floral crowns.
You heard my bio. Myself and a friend started our collective, activist art collective, a couple of years ago, and so one of the things we're going to do is to
do.
We're creating a banner for people to take selfies in front of a support Ukraine type message.
Mhm.
But also the goal is we're making the floral crowns. What is the correct name, Lisa?
I'm making one now.
But anyway, we're going to try and raise money.
I'll look it up.
I'm actually in a hotel room.
But by the way, if anybody would like to send money, my friends in Switzerland, they live in this village called Trogen, and they have 150 refugees that have come in, and they have a small private organization there. And so I just sent them some money because to help take care. That way you could
Free to put it in the chat.
Yeah, if you want to give money directly to an organization, just get in touch with me and I'll give you their information.
Mm-hmm.
And you can.
And just, I want to mention that, I don't know if we can see it.
I can. Oh my gosh, that looks fantastic. I love it.
So a group of us are making those, and the idea is that people will put on the crowns, get their selfie, and we will tell them the organizations to donate to.
Okay, so how do we get together to make them with you?
Well, we're already making them, but I can send you some videos to make one, and they're pretty. Believe me, I had actually, the terrible situation in the Ukraine, but actually I had a lot of fun and making this, and it only took me like 2 hours, and this is not my thing, So, but
it looks great. So you could send me like a little video.
Yes, I will send you.
Yeah. I can send it to you too.
Can you send it to me, Lisa?
Because I'm making a crown myself, and there, regarding Ukraine fundraisers, we're helping Carpe Diem Arts get out the word. They're having a special concert in Easton on the Eastern Shore, Maryland, just beyond Annapolis, this Friday night at 7, featuring Gerdan, the Ukrainian ensemble who we saw at the Kennedy Center this past weekend. They're doing multiple fundraising events, and then they'll be at Sandy Spring Museum the following Friday.
Oh, okay.
So that's a little easier to get to. But thanks, I'll get that to you.
The White House, outside the Russian embassy, and probably outside the Ukrainian embassy is probably where we'll be over the next few weekends. So probably not starting this weekend, but the following weekend.
Okay, that sounds great. By the way, I just, I was a little bit late starting because I got started watching this program on through Frontline on Ukraine and Putin, and it's very depressing. I mean, it's actually really depressing because this guy is really jerk. He's just a horrible
He's
person.
a horrible person, that's for sure.
Yeah.
On so many levels. It's
As if the world didn't have enough problems.
I know.
We started all this.
Yeah.
But,
I'm sure he picked his timing. I mean, everybody is kind of weakened with COVID to a certain extent, and people want to get on with
No, when you listen to these people talking about him, I mean, this has been going on for basically for at least 20 years.
right.
But there were
Jackie,
certain
I'm going to
things-
sign off.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Lida. I really appreciate you.
yeah, this was great, you guys.
Yeah.
It was so
Thank
much
you
fun.
to all our poets.
And here's to truffles. I mean, that's why I got involved with mushrooms to begin with.
Sure.
That
Well,
was
thank you for